Well, what you can see on the screen right now is what's also on my screen. This is the U.S. Embassy in Accra air quality data for right now. So this is today's air quality. Well, it goes back till about 24 hours ago. So you can see that by this morning we had some kind of red, that's AQI in the red, which means unhealthy for sensitive groups. Or that means unhealthy for everyone. Green is good. Orange is unhealthy for sensitive groups, which is what we're at right now. If there's a little bit of a delay here, so I'm going to have to deal with that. But the reason I wanted to show this, this is publicly available data, and we used this data back in before COVID, actually. So it was in early 2020 during my first trip here to Accra, and we were able to put a purple air monitor at the U.S. Embassy right before the pandemic, before everything closed down. So that was the first low-cost sensor co-location here in Accra, and we were able to work with that a little bit, and luckily we got it in before the pandemic, and we were able to do a lot of cool things with that. And so I'm going to show some of that data and show kind of like how we processed it. And the paper that actually describes all this is freely available. You can see it on my screen here in a second. There's a big lag, but it'll eventually come up with the title. Where so we had, the previous speaker was one of the authors, and also Mr. Oppo here and Dr. Hughes as well. So we were able to co-locate a purple air with the embassy BAM, and if we can get the figure up, so it was, maybe if I can even zoom in even more, perhaps. Yeah, here we go. You can see that the data collection started in March of 2020, and we stopped in about March of 2021, or the end of March, so it was about 13 months. Okay, so that's sort of the backstory. What does the data look like? So I'm putting it on my screen right now. So if you go to that U.S. Embassy website, you can find where to download the CSV files. These are CSV files that I'm looking at right now. I have it open in Excel, but they're just comma-separated value data files. And you'll see it has things kind of organized pretty nicely into some columns. Maybe I can zoom in so people can see a little better. So it'll just tell you kind of information about the data. It'll tell you the dates and time. And so it's usually broken up by hourly averages. So you'll see that there's a new data point every hour for every day. This is several years old, so back from 2020. You'll find some other things here. You'll find the raw concentration eventually, so that's kind of like the data that we need. And then you'll also find the AQI, which is the air quality index. Now you're probably wondering, why are they negative? Why are all these negative 999s? So you see these negative values here. This was the very beginning of the BAM deployment in Accra. All right, so this was January 27th of the year 2020. And so for the first few days, the BAM was not reporting good data. They were still calibrating it. They were still getting it set up. And so the negative 999 here just represents an invalid data flag. All right, so it just sort of signals to you that the data is not valid. And if that wasn't enough, it even actually says over here, QC name invalid. All right, so eventually we get down here a little bit, you'll start to see some valid data. Okay, this is where it starts to be good numbers here, and this is January 30th. So there was a few days of untrustworthy data while they were getting things set up. Yeah, so that's the U.S. Embassy data. This is from a BAM, beta attenuation monitor. What about, what does the purple air data look like? So I have an example of that as well, and we can pull that up on my screen here, and I will zoom in. This is what a typical purple air file looks like, and purple air, of course, is just one of dozens and dozens of sensor manufacturers, so by no means is this universal across sensor manufacturers, but you still will see probably something that is similar, it contains the same information or similar information. And so, yeah, it has the date. There's a lot of columns here that I'm not even going to talk about because they're sort of not important, but it has the date, and it has a certain format for the date as well. You'll see that the format is a little bit different than what it was in the other CSV file, so that's something we have to deal with. And then we'll skip over these few right here, and then you'll start to see some of the actual data that we're more interested in. So this is current temperature, current humidity, current dew point, pressure. Again, these are some like hardware specific things that I'm going to skip over. And then finally, you'll start getting into the particulate matter. All right. So the one that we want to use the most is this column, PM 2.5 ATM. That's what Purple Air uses for their main PM 2.5 concentrations. There's a bunch of other stuff here as well. I don't recommend using the PM10 or the PM1 data from any type of sensor manufacturer that uses plan towers or sensorions or any sort of nephelometer, as that data is not physical. So we have these two different data sets, and they're very different. So I didn't even tell you, but this file here, its file name is a date. It says 2020 May 14. So they give you these files in one file per day, and then the timing you'll also see is a lot different. So it looks like here it's about every 2 minutes you have a measurement. All right, so this is all for May 14th of 2020. I just picked this particular file out, but I have them all for about 13 months. And it'll say the time here, and here's a value at 12:03 and 49 seconds. Here's one at 12:05 and 49 seconds, and so on and so on. So it looks like about every 2 minutes. So that's another difference with the BAM data that we need to account for. All right, so that's sort of what the data looks like. Now, what can you do to to analyze this data? The preferred tool that I like to use is something called Python, something called Jupyter, which is a Python notebook. I know several of you already work with Python notebooks and work with Jupyter, and so this may be too basic for you, so just hang with me for a minute. But if you go to your search browser and you search for Anaconda Navigator, then you can download this. It's free, and one of the packages that it comes with is something called a Jupyter Notebook. All right, so you can launch a Jupyter Notebook, and when you launch it, you'll get something like this. It launches in your browser, so it launches in your Google Chrome or your Safari or your Firefox or whatever. And what it is basically just a sandbox for you to write code, analyze data, read in data files, do some statistics on them, average them, plot, make plots. That's a big thing of what we do in data analysis and in research is making figures and using them to draw conclusions scientifically about the data. So I think in the interest of time, I am not going to sort of walk through everything, and also I would have to figure out a way to hold the microphone and type at the same time, which is kind of difficult. So I'm going to just show an existing notebook that I've already worked on and just kind of walk you through a few things, all right? So I made this notebook last night. And the first thing you need to do is, no, that's fine. You don't have to do that. I appreciate it, though. The first thing you need to do is import libraries. So let me explain what that means. So Python itself is a core language. It's a computer programming language, and there's sort of a core version of it that has some capabilities, but it's not very customizable by itself, and there's not a lot of really good things. I mean, there's not a lot that you can do in terms of data analysis with just this core Python language. So what we typically do is a lot of very smart people have come up with their own sort of additions to Python. Or that's what a library is. It's like somebody's add-on, sort of like bonus feature. And so people have made these, and they're very well vetted and organized. So it's not just somebody on the internet randomly doing it. These are used by probably millions of people. And I have some of them sort of imported here. So you have to import them in order to use them. And actually, you have to install them first before you even import them. But we don't have time to kind of go over that. However, the good news is that there are tons of tutorials online. There's tons of good information online on how to teach yourself some basics of Python. And I can certainly send people links to that if they want to find out. But really, it's a matter of, the information is out there, and it's very possible, even for a complete beginner, to get up to speed and to do the kind of things that you can do. So we import all these libraries. Some of the key ones, something called Pandas, which is kind of like a scientific data analysis package. We have a few other packages here that are kind of important, libraries rather. So Plotly, you could probably guess by the name, is a plotting library. It helps you make graphs and figures with data. DateTime is something that allows you to format dates. So if you noticed in the data files, we had this sort of messy date version where it's year, month, day, the letter T, hour, minute, second, and the letter Z. We compare that to the embassy BAM data, and it's something entirely different. It's month, day, year, and then hour, minute. So DateTime allows you to do that. And then there's some other plotting stuff here as well, and some of these. So this is linear regression. So I'm not going to have time to sort of get into that, but if you wanted to develop a correction factor for your air sensor data, you might need linear regression. All right, so that's sort of just pretty easy. You can often copy and paste that stuff. And if you want to ever, you'll notice that there's like different cells here. All right, so what you typically want to do is kind of put code into certain blocks. All right, similar pieces of code. You don't want to have all your code in one giant block. You kind of want to make it modular so that you can run certain pieces, see if they work, and then run a different piece. And if it doesn't work, then you sort of know, okay, it's right here in this cell. Then I can troubleshoot just that, and everything else seems to work. All right, so what you can do is you click on the little plus, and then it'll give you a prompt here, and you can sort of write your code in that little box. But like I said, I've already kind of gone on through that. I put these headings here, so import libraries, and then after you do that, the first thing you want to do is load your data. All right, so